Okay, Madhumita. Oh, I'm sorry, I should be calling you Professor
No, no, no,
Madhumita.
it's okay, sir. Absolutely.
It's been very casual chat, so I forget your doctor and mother, Professor.
No, no, it's okay. It's okay. Absolutely okay, sir.
Uh, look, in fact, I welcome you to our program, AuroTalks. And this is a program envisaged to bring out another aspect of Sri Aurobindo. If you remember, last year we had done a book on Sri Aurobindo's multi-personality. So there I focused on Sri Aurobindo, the person, and the personalities that he has. We found about 24 of them, and all again, your contribution was there. So this time I thought we have been again helped by Ministry of Culture with funds to bring out this project and also a book. And the book we have named, as we told you, it's called Sri Aurobindo and the World Thinkers. Because I wanted to connect with Sri Aurobindo that is he contemporarily relevant, or is he a forgotten figure, or his philosophy is no more relevant? But I've seen that obviously it's not so. He is really relevant in the past, present, and the future. And some of you have written, compared his thoughts with a lot of contemporary philosophers, thinkers, writers, poets. So that gives me the courage that yes, what the mother had foreseen in 1972, 50 years back, that his thought will be impacting. In fact, as she said, those who are open will be absorbed by his thought. So after reading all your essays, yours and others, I'm convinced now that Sri Aurobindo's thought has gone abroad. And those who are open, be it Italy or Australia or England or America, wherever, there is a kind of a thought wave that has gone abroad. The thought name, we know is Sri Aurobindo, but people may not know, but it's not important. Important thing is the new way of thinking has come about. And many people have caught across the world. And so I was really happy to get your comparison between Antonio Gramsci and Sri Aurobindo. Although the Antonio Gramsci is very young, and yet he has got some essential truths that we see are reflected in Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo, although he wrote most of his ideas in 100 years back, still people have caught on some aspect of his thought. So I'm very glad to get your article called Sri Aurobindo and Antonio Gramsci, Power, Politics and Culture. And my idea of going for this AuroTalks is more to clarify and simplify and moreover to communicate some of these main ideas to the would-be listeners. You see, those who read our book may not be able to understand because you see, yours is from the political angle, somebody has written from the philosophical angle, somebody from the literature angle. So I'm making this AuroTalks so as to enable the reader understand better what you have written in your article. So from that point of view, I'd be asking you a few clarifications. The write-up is clear, is in fact very clear, very beautifully compared, very relevant comparisons and points. But it's more to help the would-be reader that we would be having a bit of a chat. So it's not a really interview in that type, but more to conversation between us and to elaborate some of these main points. Well, you have already given in your introduction that you are going to draw on similarities with the ideologies of both the great revolutionaries, Sri Aurobindo and Antonio, are seen, and you would like to focus on that. And you have given in the first beginning the commonality of their lifestyle, what has happened in their lives, the major events, and some of the major ideas. But here, there are a couple of things that I would like to help the reader by asking you one question. On page 5, if you have the version with you, there's my hard copy. At the bottom of the page, you have written a very interesting comment. We do not find any contradictions in Sri Aurobindo's writings. Gramsci's works, his correspondences, however, expose the inner contradictions of his persona. Could you get that? Right at the bottom of the page. The paragraph beginning with, when we look back at the life of the young Aurobindo. Get the beginning of the paragraph?
Page
Maybe you
5.
have page 5.
Okay.
And then right at the bottom, the last 3 lines. The young Aurobindo too had to face trial in court and was in jail for 1 year. But this proved to be a turning point in his life.
Yes.
We do not find any contradictions in Sri Aurobindo's writings. I mean, can you explain what you mean by this? We do not find any contradictions in Sri Aurobindo, whereas in Gramsci you find them.
Okay, so very interesting point. That is when we look at the writings of Sri Aurobindo from the very beginning. So my point here is to establish him as a revolutionary political thinker, theorist, philosopher. So when we are talking about Sri Aurobindo, particularly when we are taking up the aspect of his those writings where he comes to us as a revolutionary, we see this this instinct for this passion for struggle, for revolution, all through. He was all through a revolutionary. So maybe his ideas, they intensified in a way, but the basic ideas of freedom and liberty, they remained the same. There was basically radically no change. So when he was talking about political freedom of India, that was, I think, the first phase of his revolutionary writings, as we get in his say Bande Mataram or the journalistic articles. And when we compare it with the later Arya period, you see the basic line is the same. He's talking about freedom. Even when he's talking about political freedom, he is thinking of the spiritual regeneration and spiritual freedom of the entire world. Because first of all, he said, when we are a subject nation, we have to be politically free first. And what was political freedom for? The first aim was, the practical aim was political freedom of the country. We have to get freedom from our British, the colonizers. But this freedom was to be used for the benefit of the entire world, for the benefit of the entire race of human beings. And this was what continued even in his later days, when we find him writing out his philosophy of freedom and spiritual regeneration. So the basic line continues. That is why I feel there is actually no contradiction.
No, very right. So that is the essential truth. If you see two major ideas, freedom and evolution. And evolution also is kind of started with revolution, which kind of culminates in evolution. Very rightly said. But the other, immediately the next sentence you say, in Gramsci we find this self contradiction, the inner contradiction you have said. What do you mean by that?
Inner contradiction is Gramsci actually, he went through a very, you can say, a very chaotic life within and without. Okay, he was suffering from a very bad disease, a kind of neurosis. So actually, even when you go to his major writing, that is the prison notebooks, you have a lot of material from a lot of viewpoints and lot of topics. But ultimately, he's also thinking of a spiritual regeneration. He's thinking of a new race. He's thinking of transformation. But actually where to synthesize that, he didn't get hold of that highest synthesis. Though he's talking about dialectical materialism and all, so everything is dialectical, but that higher synthesis, he does not, that eludes him, that escapes him, probably because he was suffering internally and physically. He was being tortured in fascist jails and all. So there is actually, wherever he's trying to synthesize, that last bit, the highest one actually eludes him. That is
That
why
is.
so many topics, but the right kind of synthesis, like when Sri Aurobindo is writing about, say, the ideal of human unity, the entire focus is there, and he gives us the ultimate solution. Not so in Gramsci. That is why I felt this, maybe, this was my interpretation.
You're very rightly justified. And do you think that in Sri Aurobindo, as you said, there is no contradiction? You're right. Very beautifully put there. Is there can we say there's an evolution of thought in Sri Aurobindo, or the word evolution would be wrong to use?
No, there is evolution of thought. Definitely, there's evolution of thought. There is ascension of consciousness, because when we look at his major works, The Life Divine or Savitri, he himself says it's according to the ascensions I made, and accordingly, he revised and changed so many passages and all. So there is evolution. The evolution
Yeah.
is there. Basically, the bottom line.
Fundamental principles are the same.
Yes. The structure remains the same, base remains the same, superstructures change probably.
Lovely. Can you come to page 9 if you have?
Yes.
Here, there is a line towards the end. If you find it, you see the ruling or dominant class. Can you get the line? Must establish and make its own moral and cultural values towards the,
Yes.
again, bottom line.
Hmm.
So you have written here, the ruling or dominant class must establish and make its own moral and cultural values as conventional norms of behavior in society, so that they became the common sense of all and all come to speak the same language. Well, I could get that, but then the line next, thus control was more an internal control than merely external, the economic means. If you study the history of colonization, domination of any country, etc., where you have gone down is the aspect of control. You see, that's one of the very important points you have brought about, and quite a revealing thing. What you have quoted here in the next page, you have got Sri Aurobindo's quotation. The control of the young mind in its most impressionable period is of vital importance to the continuance of the hypnotic spell by which alone the foreign domination manages to subsist. I've seen this concept of control in both Antonio and Sri Aurobindo, but do they differ in that, or are they coming very similar to the controlling? What's the meaning of control? Because if I understand, there's the control and consent, they go together.
Absolutely.
Can you really explain on that?
Yeah, that's actually the major thesis or philosophy of Gramsci. Or I'll begin with Gramsci first, because we are talking about hegemony over here, and his major philosophy is about the structuralization or the division. That is one dominant class, the class which is dominant at any given point of time. So that tries to control the dominated. So in his times, it was northern Italy and southern Italy, or whatever, the capitalist and the proletariat, whatever, and the working class. He was talking about the working class. And parallelly, if we look at Sri Aurobindo's colonized India, it was the British masters and the subject nation over here. So the conquest actually comes, a major part of a successful conquest comes from the consent of the people. I have given a few more quotations over here.
Yes.
where he's saying the control of the young mind. He's particularly mentioning the word young mind. That is a mind which is still in its formation. So if the dominant or the dominant ruling class uh, uh, gives its own message, or it tries to control, it's very easy to control the young mind. That is why he's talking about the hypnotic spell. So if the dominant class tells us, I'm the superior being, you all are inferior, keeps on and on. So this is what gets ingrained in their minds, and then it is easy, very easy for the dominant class, the ruler class, to rule these subject people. And that is how they acquire the consent of the ruled to be ruled by them. And so this is what he's saying, that more than military power, more than military control, I win a war by military means, arms and weapons. So these are equally potential weapons that is internally controlling whom I have won by military power. So once I wage a war, I win the war, I kill your soldiers, I'm the dominant rulers, that is okay. But next step, the equation can be turned. So what I will do to establish what I have won, to keep it secure, I will now try to conquer the minds of these people. So that is why I think, and this is when Sri Aurobindo is writing the Bande Mataram, he was very young. So we can't even say that he had already entered the path of yoga. So this was what he found when he just came back to India. He was so young and so keen in observation. And what I actually wanted to say was, when Gramsci is actually using these terms, these are his coinages, that is internal control, internal hegemony, all these. But without using these terms, Sri Aurobindo, I think, has already given explanations, already defined what control actually is by a dominant class, whether it's the capitalist class and the proletariat, whether it's the British masters or the Indian colonized people. The equation and the basic philosophy of conquest and consent, I suppose they are similar in both.
Any chance that this Antonio has come across Aurobindo's political writings?
No, I don't think so, because he was actually studying. He was actually studying linguistics, and he was doing Greek poetry. He, like Sri Aurobindo, he was studying studying European literature, ancient and modern. But I don't suppose he actually came across all these works by Sri Aurobindo.
Yeah,
early death also. So
early death.
Not very likely. Yeah. That is why I said internal contradictions, because his life was full of that. So internally and within and without, he was a sufferer all through.
You see, you have written a very important sentence here in brief. In other words, they consent to be ruled. This is the situation that was there in British India. Down the line, I mean, the quotation, you got a long explanation of what is consent. And I think that's a very important concept, that this consent, as you have explained already, without the consent, the conquest could not have been there. And also, Sri Aurobindo has a long quotation where he says, just a military power, they could not have conquered India. Because what was important, as I said, is, once you conquer, you have to keep them conquered by their consent. Otherwise, they could have revolted. You see, so this concept of consent has played a major role in India's freedom movement, isn't it? That's what Sri Aurobindo has used, in fact.
Used, yes. Especially in his indictment of the Congress and their moderate policies. That is it.
And so his political movements. Yeah,
this despotism, this is a very a very favorite quotation with me, because it says such a lot, that despotism out of touch with the people. That is, you cannot remain despotic for a long time if you do not know how to manipulate those people over whom you are ruling. So this is very, it's very deeply thought out.
This is a very central quotation, actually. And I think even for India's freedom movement, I think this is the thing that goes behind Sri Aurobindo's own saying when he wrote from Pondicherry a letter saying why he left British India and then came away. You remember that quote, what he said? Why did he come away to Pondicherry, leaving the freedom movement?
The exact
Do you remember?
words.
Well, it was like this something. He said, I have done what I had to do. That is to awaken the masses.
Yes.
The
Who had fallen into a kind of stupor, yes.
And the stupor, that's the right word. I was looking for that. So he says his work was with the masses. He has awakened the masses. I think that is where, if I can understand rightly, he has used the same method as the Britishers in controlling the Indians psychologically. Sri Aurobindo, through his Bande Matram, has used the same method to convert this thinking of consent.
Yes.
And they began to understand that Indians also have their own culture. And so this consent is what became contradictory. Now, no more the consent was there. They withdrawn the consent. I think because I could not understand when Sri Aurobindo wrote that, I have awakened the masses. So the central word is the consent, So that was a very important thing. And the quotation that I was telling you was this. When the sepoys had conquered India for the...
Yes. And
we got
actually, see, if I don't consent, means I'm going to revolt. If I consent, if I acquiesce, I accept you. But when I don't want to consent, that is the first step I'm going to take, that is to revolt. So, yes, that is, I think, sir, it's in the next page. That is when he's talking about when the sepoys had conquered India for the English.
Yeah.
So such a very acute observation of the historical process. That is what happened actually. The psychological aspect of it. The historical, chronological, we all know. But this is how he's analyzed the psychology of these people who knew how to rule the ruled people, who knew how to establish firmly their rule. And so I think long before they had already found out the means how to secure their, this victory.
Because the last sentence there is very important. To hold it forever was then considered by most statesmen as chimerical idea. Even to govern it and keep it tranquil for a time was not feasible without the sympathy and cooperation of the people themselves.
Yes, absolutely.
This is very crucial.
So,
because oftentimes I ask myself the question, how is it that the Indian army, Indian people, killed Indians, employed by the Britishers? So the psychological conquest was there first.
Absolutely. Psychological, mental conquest. Otherwise, the military conquest would have been a farce because they needed to, hold it over them. And that is why, all this inferiority and superiority of cultures.
I can see the meaning in there.
Your identity. Who are you? Obliterate your identity. That is why. And then we have the concept of, burden of the white man. That is, you are nothing, you were nothing, so I have come here to, redeem you. Yes.
And this quote of that famous quotation on India's education, do you remember? Was it Macaulay? No. Who said what is Macaulay's quotation?
Yes. They wanted to know.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, that is, Macaulay's, we all know the very famous thing. What was his mission? That is to make Indians, for their benefit, for their convenience, make servants out of Indians who will serve us. Not to properly educate them, but to, keep the Indians as servants.
But I think, if I'm not too wrong, he does use something like that. We have to break their confidence in their own culture.
Yes, that is the main mission. That is the colonizing mission. Once we get to know what we are, once we remember and, we bank upon our past glory, so their task becomes difficult. So we'll no longer consent, we'll look back, we'll look at ourselves, and we'll no longer consent to be ruled.
So I think Sri Aurobindo used the same weapon as Britishers has used on us. That is, again, taking away the same psychological battle into their front, and took away the consent and the approval from the Indians and the masses. I had one question here, Madhumita. That is, Antonio also speaks of the masses, proletariat.
Yes.
But there's a difference between masses of Sri Aurobindo and the masses of Antonio. The way he is using the masses and the way Sri Aurobindo is using the masses. What would be that difference, you think?
Yes. So here, as I have written, the mass, the proletariat, he was actually, it was for Sri Aurobindo, it was an entire nation of Indians, the entire race, except for a few elite people, it was the entire race. And he was actually talking about a section of the Italians, that is the working class people. So that was quantitatively, maybe that was a difference. And he was talking about the mass, the proletariat, in terms of his theory of hegemony, where he's talking about the collective national will. And so he's talking about the people nation. That is, his war, or his struggle, his revolt was against a sort of capitalist class, that is, who were dominating them. Whereas here there was a difference of culture, a difference of cultural, so many kinds of, the differences were great. And political power, in terms of political power also, Sri Aurobindo faced a different situation. So he believed in the collective will, that is the dictatorship, and he was talking about dictatorship. And there's a very interesting thing which I really liked in his theory, that is, he's talking about where dictatorship is not leadership, and in almost the same terms, Sri Aurobindo is also talking about that. So both these thinkers believe that. And there is a difference, that is, Sri Aurobindo also said, if there has to be a dictator in that sense, that is, who is going to be a leader, the entire mass of people, the proletariat, they have to lead. So more or less it's the same thing, but the conditions, political conditions were different, economic conditions maybe were different, but the basic idea is that it is not the elite few, not the dominant class, but these people have to come up and then collectively lead. So they will be the dictators. So there will be one dictator, that is the entire people, the mass, that is proletariat.
This with Antonio, the masses were more a class. Whereas Vishwa, it was a class.
And with Sri Aurobindo is the entire nation.
Nation.
Yes.
Yeah. That's why the very fact that he condemned the mendicant attitude of the Congress, because it is the Congress people, this is only a class, a small class of people. Where Sri Aurobindo says, no, the consent has to be from the whole masses of people.
Whole mass, that is, who are just left behind.
Left behind, yes. Yeah. What is the program, the political program worked out by Sri Aurobindo for this freedom movement? You have mentioned somewhere. Can you just give it a couple of lines on that? He was asking his countrymen to awaken from the stupor, from the tamas which had gripped them. Got that paragraph? I mean, what is the political program? He has also not only given an ideal, but he gave a practical program.
Yes, he was. Yes, I have written. This is, I think, on the this revolution part, and he's saying he's talking about armed revolution. He's talking about aggressive revolution and the armed revolt and passive revolution. So he's giving us 3 or 4 stages or 3 or 4 methods of revolution. So he's saying if the passive revolution is not successful, then go for aggressive revolution, but don't back away from struggle, even if it means armed revolt, go for it. So I think that was the program. I think I've done it.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yes, here he's saying where the need for immediate liberty is urgent and it is a present question of national life or death on the instant. Revolt is the only course, and he has given us three or four methods of revolting. So the last method was to take, refuge in armed revolt, but that is so. And here Gramsci is also saying that it has to be organized, it has to be minute and prepared.
Yeah, Madhumita, can you come to your quotation beginning with foreign rule is unnatural and fatal to a nation?
Yes.
After page 15 or so. Precisely because by its very nature, it throws itself upon these activities and capacities and crushes them down in the interest of its own continued existence. The last line is very important. For this reason, national independence is absolutely necessary to national growth. There can be no national development without national liberty. You got that quote? Quotation beginning with foreign rule. Foreign rule is the natural. On page 15 with me.
Page 15.
It's a quotation in italics is there.
Okay, yes, I got it. This foreign rule is unnatural and fatal to a nation. Yeah. That one.
The last line of the para of the quotation, just read it. For this reason.
Yes, for this reason. Okay, the subject nation becomes dependent, disorganized. Yes. For this reason, national independence is absolutely necessary to national growth. There can be no national development without national liberty.
How does it connect? How do you explain it?
The political liberty of India, that was foremost on his mind then. So he's saying that is when we are dominated, I say when we were being dominated by the British. So we consented, we accepted all that they taught us. So he's saying by not or by forgetting to think for ourselves, by forgetting to be mentally and psychologically free, because we were colonized in various ways, not only politically and economically, our psyche was also colonized, our minds were colonized. So he's saying we have become, we are it's a condition of atrophy, that is mental, psychological. So if we keep on being dependent on these people, we will just wither away one day. So for this reason, he's saying in national independence, in the sense that is political independence first. That is, we have to recognize ourselves, identify ourselves as a nation first. That yes, we are a race of people. We can depend on ourselves for our growth. So he's saying, first the liberty, that is the freedom, political freedom, and then we can think of growth and progress and development on our own terms, not being dependent on these people anymore.
One of the things not here, but somewhere I read in his writings, that as long as you are a slave, nobody listens to you. I mean, if you are a slave of some rulers, they will never listen to you because you are a slave. He says, from that point of view also, we must become free. So we stand as equals, and then you can have your exchange of ideas and interviews. And
people you can, when you can rule yourself and not be ruled by others.
This last line, can it be applied to the present situation in the country? There can be no national development without national liberty. I mean, at present, in what
all times, sir, all times, because yes, we are politically free now, but economically, I don't know, in the global market, maybe we don't have that much of liberty. So yes, national liberty, yes, it is for all times, not only today, but we don't know what conditions we are to face tomorrow. So national development, so national liberty, definitely. And national liberty, I suppose it includes the liberty of every Indian, that is in a way. But here also we have our hierarchies, we have this control, we have this economic hegemony. So all these, so how free are we? That is the question which, which still we can ask.
Yeah. Just down the line, if you follow the same page, there's a wonderful line, a single line that you have given here. Democracy is impossible without a demos. A people politically awake and active.
Yes.
You see, this is democracy is impossible without a demos. This is, I mean, what's the meaning of this without a demos? Demos means what?
The people, the collectivity, that is the mass,
Collectivity.
entire, yes, from where the word democracy has come. That is the mass, the lower strata, all these, except the highest, the elite few. So all these have to be awakened to, their awakened to true knowledge. That is politically awake, not only awake, active. That is
Ah,
has to be, yes, that is physically, mentally active.
true. On some other writing, maybe not even a writing, it's more a comment in his conversations, evening talks, He does mention somewhere that this political democracy is not suitable to India. Do you remember that? Have you
Yeah,
read that ever?
this is sort of, the greatest democracy we call ourselves, but how democratic everything is in the country, even today, that's a big question. Okay, that's very doubtful that how democratic are we? That is, even after so many years of independence, we are, having like we ought to be ashamed of ourselves. So many, living in poverty. So what have we done? And I suppose this is a political strategy. I don't know whether I should be mentioning this. So we are in a way dominating these people. We are still colonizing. Indians have still colonized the Indians in some way or the other. So democracy, that is okay. If you remain like that, if you remain slaves, mental and physically and mentally, so it will be easier for me to dominate you. Whatever political ideas I put into your heads, you will, go along those.
I
So
think I agree with you. It's a good observation.
the moment they think for themselves, they start thinking for themselves. There, that is a major, that is the danger to these despotic or whatever we call democratic, so-called democratic rulers.
Yeah, so-called. Yeah, there is now this political idealism that is dominating, you see. Each political idealism wants to dominate. It's not a foreign country, but our own people, as you rightly said,
Yes.
are still the dominant people. Yeah, I think.
Economically, intellectually, you keep them as slaves, so they will listen to you.
But do you think this is not there in the Western countries or in the US or something? Are they really free?
I suppose it's there everywhere. The concepts have come from them. So I think it is there, capitalism and all these. So Western concepts. So it has come from them. It's there. It's part of this history of human civilization. It's a part of that.
Yeah.
This power is actually, it's manifested economically and politically, but that greed for power, it's a psychological thing. So it has to be there. It is there.
It is there. In some form or the other, they're all over the world. I mean, they're called biggest democracy.
Yes.
And be it communist countries or capitalist countries, I think this element of hegemony is there by these political classes.
Everywhere.
Well, we have here a line from you, what you said earlier, that organized resistance in subject nations, which mean to live and not die, can have no less an object than an entire and radical change of the system of government. That's on page 18 with me, maybe on page 19 with you.
Mm-hmm.
There's a quotation you have given. Organized
resistance, organized resistance, revolt, some kind of, revolt.
So this is what Sri Aurobindo wanted for the India's freedom movement, an organized resistance.
Organized resistance and radical change in the system, a radical change. That is not only, I suppose, it can exceed its immediate context, and we can say the radical change in the social mental structure also, not only political, economical. Only then these subject nations will be able to live. That is, will be able to survive.
And what you're saying about passive resistance, he also preached defensive resistance, mainly passive in its methods to be shaped into active as the need for active resistance arises. You see, a country which was learning all this kind of defensive resistance and an active resistance from Sri Aurobindo through Vande Mataram, how did it turn into the Satyagraha, a very passive resistance later on once Sri Aurobindo came away? Because if Sri Aurobindo says that he has done his work of awakening the masses, then immediately the masses, after a couple of years, someone else comes on the scene and there is no question of defensive resistance or aggressive resistance. It becomes a satyagraha, surrendering yourself to the atrocities of the Britishers. So there was again a mass change. I'm unable to understand why Sri Aurobindo has awakened and then suddenly the whole thing collapses. What could have been the reason among the Indian
patterns of thought, I suppose, and those who were doing the difference, I suppose, in the basic philosophy of these two political thinkers, because he was, but I suppose more than the satyagraha, whatever he said, that's boycott and all, and Swadeshi and all this, they should have been or could have been more effective. Maybe he left the arena of active politics. Maybe had he continued, but then a different kind of mindset, a different political thoughts come in, and maybe people are, and there's also a question of, say, popularity, if I may use the term. So maybe it was easier for these men to accept that, and maybe Sri Aurobindo was far ahead of his times. Maybe people couldn't grasp it very properly.
That's the right point, I think.
That is, even now, many people, that is, even the intellectuals I'm talking about, they're not very comfortable with Sri Aurobindo's thoughts and theories because they fail to understand. Because maybe because of that may be one reason. That's very personal, and there may be historical factors also involved.
That's where I feel best. Some people root to Sri Aurobindo, you come back and take the leadership of the movement.
Because when everything was failing, yes, they could do it, but then the wars came, and then this was a Scripps mission, and also people may have felt at that point of time that yes, what he said, we could have gone along those lines, but when they tried to do it their way, their methods were all failing, and they failed miserably. We know the results.
Yeah, but we'll not talk about that now. Some other time we'll talk about the failure. Well, coming to Gramsci now, there is on page 19 with me and maybe 20 page with you, page 20, this question of the fascism. He extends the term to fascism, which was a case of revolution restoration. Passive revolution in Gramscian theory is more about creating a new equilibrium. Could you get that line? That's on page 20.
Yes.
Yes,
here is a bit different from Sri Aurobindo's concept of passive, revolt, passive revolution, because he's saying passive revolution is not very violent in its course, in its method. Suddenly, some kind of structure, it just takes over. Almost, it's you can say anti-violent. So that is what he's saying, what he means by passive. And another very important point he makes is that in this kind of passive revolution, the majority of the population, they are excluded. So it's not that the entire population is making this kind of or participating in this kind of revolt. So they are excluded. So this is passive revolution. And when large sections, that is a majority of the population, they take part to bring in some kind of change, that is anti-passive revolution he's talking about. So he's saying revolution, it is a revolution, but actually it is not a revolution because it is done more or less comparatively silently than the noise a violent revolution makes. So that is his concept of passive revolution.
Yeah. So coming to the page 22, where you have come more or less to the conclusion, you have written Sri Aurobindo was witnessing the birth of New Asia and modernization of the East. Gramsci lived in an ever exemplifying world. Could you get that line?
Yes.
Now, this is what I wanted to comment again. This is especially in the case of Gramsci, whose work has had so many interpretations and commentaries which seem to have obscured the texts themselves, according to critics. Sri Aurobindo's works share almost the same fate, except that they are perhaps more difficult to comprehend, and some texts have not been read widely. Now, it's a bit of a mysterious comment to say Sri Aurobindo's same fate except. How do you understand? Do you really mean that Sri Aurobindo's text has been misunderstood or misinterpreted in any way?
Not misunderstood. Mainly, I feel, because when I talk among with others, I do feel that a lot more could be done, a lot more can be done. That is why I always feel that the amount of attention or critical attention that can be given, that's somewhere we are lacking. That I feel that, because when we're talking about so people will not easily accept one or two who know they is grossly misunderstood. At least that's what I have felt in my intellectual circles. So in fact, I am, I hesitate to talk about Sri Aurobindo at all, except okay, in those particular circles, I've been asked many times in my own college to give a talk or a lecture. I've been doing this. I do this every month in two places, third and fourth Saturdays, but I never consented. My principal ma'am has asked me several times, but what I feel, that if I give a lecture, or if I do a seminar on particularly Sri Aurobindo, students, teachers will not attend. Somehow this is my feeling. I have this intuitive feeling. So that is why I feel that yes, most of his texts are not widely read, and if you don't read them deeply, that is extensive and intensive study, both are required. So the chances are that it will be misunderstood. First of all, philosophy is very difficult to grasp. That is why perhaps I have written that.
I understand what you're saying. Maybe there's another element. We are missing an element of self-analysis and self-criticism, self-judgment. In the sense, one sentence you said, we are a little afraid of self-analysis, because either we will be misunderstood if I say something. Yes. I mean, not contradictory, but like any other author or writer, they have lots of questions on Sri Aurobindo. Not an ill-will question, but a very scholarly questions.
Yes.
Somewhere among the Aurobindonians, this element of self-criticism or bold questioning, questioning more to understand, more to know more.
Yes.
That aspect is missing. And I think I think that would have been a healthy trend if the scholars, youngsters, young people like you can really start asking deeper questions. And one thing I've seen, the more you ask Sri Aurobindo, the more you get, wiser, in the sense, somewhere or the other, he gives you your answer. I mean, your questions are always answered in some book or the other down the line. I think this aspect is missing in Sri Aurobindo's reading. One of the reasons why it's misunderstood and why your students are not coming, or even same thing here, is that we kind of build a kind of a mirage around him, and he's impenetrable.
Absolutely.
So we have to take away that kind of a capsulation of Sri Aurobindo and bring him out to the public and say, okay, you can question, you can answer.
We can at least begin with what was his message for the youth of the country, because we generally don't identify Sri Aurobindo with young people or youth or any message that we always think of him, the general concept is he is a rishi, he is a mahayogi, so how can we reach that level? But we have to go back to his early works to create this kind of environment in which he can be better understood. And that is required. I really feel it is required. Even a great poet, nothing of his poetry in our syllabus. I'm so surprised. That is, I really feel this lacuna. There's nothing there.
That's what I'm nowadays trying to push through Sakar also and my contacts, that we have to have a bridging now. Bring him down from Mahayogi to a contemporary person. And then reading your articles and other writings, I'm convinced that there is a bridging that's being made in spite of us. There are others like Gramsci or David Chalmers, somebody yesterday told me. So now they are thinking on our behalf. What we are not able to do as Aurobindonian disciples or scholars, they are coming out not as disciples or scholars, but as independent thinkers, coming very close to Sri Aurobindo, and like what you have also found out here. So I think there is a line that is being built, and I think your Gramsci will be my purpose of taking your writing to the common public is they will understand Sri Aurobindo better now. They say, oh yeah, Gramsci also told the same thing now. So Sri Aurobindo can be read and understood on that level. Yesterday I was speaking to somebody about David Chalmers. Now we can understand Chalmers' whole question of psychology and consciousness. So many other youngsters are also contemporary. So I feel this lesson that we are going through about building bridges should be our really a very conscious effort. And as you rightly said, we have to bring down Sri Aurobindo to the communication common level.
So many different aspects. So we have to focus on, each different aspect.
Otherwise, if we mystify him, further again, when the life divan comes, it's impossible. And then
nobody. I think a live divan is not the ideal one to start with. The moment yes. So we can start, if we can start with his earlier works and then gradually build our way up. That will be, I think a proper way to analyze, study, learn from Sri Aurobindo.
I think very consciously we should make efforts to demystify him. Our previous generations have mystified him quite a lot, about it. And I remember Nalnida writing to us, telling us when the mother left her body, 73, he said, stop talking about Superman and all that. He said, now do talk about only Yama and Niyamas of Integralyoga. So he brought us down to the ground level saying, do talk about the day-to-day things. Because prior to us, my seniors, they all talked about overmind, supermind, supramental race, Gnostic race. We don't even know the spelling of that thing. So he gave a very practical message. He said, stop talking about supermind and other minds. Come to Yamas and Niyamas of yoga, of our yoga. So that's the kind of a demystification, which I think in our talks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, focus on that. And I think a political thing would be a very good starter as you are. And then you have a wonderful grip over his political activities and his vision of politics, nationalism, etc. You have a very good starter. I think use that to demystify Sri Aurobindo, to connect. Because this is one thing that youth will definitely get inspired. Hey, here is some Sri Aurobindo who was with us, who really brought us the freedom, who struggled to give us the new policy. Otherwise, the other persons with their satyagraha politics, after all, some political body has made them popular. So I think it's time to really come back to that. And I'll tell you one thing, when I shared yesterday with somebody she's a philosopher actually. She said, Dr. Reddy, nowadays Abhinav Gupta is becoming more popular than Shankaracharya. I said, that's it. That's exactly what we want. All this question of illusion and Maya and all that, that's something of the past. It doesn't affect us. But Abhinav Gupta has an integral vision of life.
Absolutely.
So he should come forward. Like what you're saying of Sri Aurobindo's integral vision, as we started our conversation saying, the fundamental principle of Sri Aurobindo is freedom. Now, the basics is freedom, national freedom, individual freedom, social freedom, world freedom, spiritual freedom.
Spiritual freedom,
And
yes.
it runs through. If you tell this to the youngsters, then they will say, yes, yeah, that Mahayogi does speak of a freedom of the individual. Because now youngsters want freedom everywhere, freedom of speech and all that.
What is freedom? How do they define it? They don't know.
They won't.
That I'll do whatever I want to do. It's not that. Freedom is a very deep concept, and we have to go to Sri Aurobindo to exactly know and define for ourselves and act on what he has written ages ago.
You see, I'm talking about freedom. You have a beautiful quote from your Gramsci, the last one. Freedom is not utopia because it's a basic aspiration. The whole history of mankind consists of struggles and efforts to create social institutions capable of ensuring a maximum of freedom. You see, Gramsci also says the same thing. The whole history.
Yes, it's a basic aspiration. Absolutely. Sri Aurobindo, look at the first passage of Life Divine. So more or less, it's basic to human beings. Why human beings? To all living creatures. We all want our share of freedom. So it's a basic aspiration, a very ancient aspiration. Until we get our final freedom, it's going to continue to be like that.
Very beautiful. Your conclusion also, you have brought them together very well. What you said last line, both have had a global impact, and the world of academicians and others are taking renewed interest in different aspects of their work. A lot of archival material has opened newer areas of research. In fact, there are letters and documents still emerging, awaiting publication. Gramsci's view on language, etymology, social linguistics, etc. And Sri Aurobindo is being studied for his philosophy of transformation, evolution, for his poetics and theory of poetry, etc. Sri Aurobindo and Gramsci offer many avenues to explore to the benefit of mankind. And as we go along them, we shall discover a richer, vaster, moral, and spiritual universe, and perhaps a deeper insight into their minds. I think it's a very beautiful conclusion, and that's exactly my view too. That's what we're talking about. That and because people are even afraid to bring together Sri Aurobindo and other thinkers. Again, this question of this, kind of a spiritual ethical rule that Sri Aurobindo should not be compared with anyone else. He's a Mahayogi. And that's how we have created kind of an ozone zone where Sri Aurobindo is left up there and not brought down to human livings. So my attempt to really compare him, connect him, is not to show Sri Aurobindo as greater or bigger, but to connect him to our real life. Yes. And I'm seeing that his thought is spreading. I mean, by itself. So if we can be
very slow pace, but definitely it is spreading.
In spite of us, he is doing his work. Well, thank you, Madhumita. A very interesting chat, I think. So this is very beautiful in the sense youngsters can understand. And if there are further questions, we'll always open them and invite them for questions. So thank you, dear. Thanks a lot for being here, part of the ill health. I'm very happy that you are participated with it.
Thank you.
Keep well. Yeah.
Thank you.